Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to start a series of making this fancy lamp. And part one is I'm going to be using glass globs to decorate a lamp base. And in the description I will talk about different supplies that I use in case you're interested. And as an affiliate I will get a little commission. This is the lamp that I bought. It's a metal lamp base. I got it at Goodwill. It was like $4 or something. It was really cheap. And I thought it would be really cool to fill between the little metal swirls with glass globs. So first of all, I use 7 32 inch foil and wrapped around all of the metal. Now you can do it like this and just use a small piece and just do it as a swirl going around. But then it did kind of take a long time this way. Now, if you're going to leave your metal, if you're going to patina it copper colored, then you need to make sure that you cover all of it with the copper, because obviously it's black to begin with. But then when you solder it, if you leave little bitsies here and there of copper color, it's no big deal because it's already copper. If you're going to leave it silver, the color of the solder, then obviously you would have to cover the whole object completely with this foil, and then make sure that you covered everything with the solder because that's the silver color. Now, I wanted to use black patina because the base of this lamp is black and the top is black, and I decided, well, I'm just going to leave these rims black, and all the solder in between the globs will be black also. So in order to get black patina to actually adhere to my project, any copper that I put on this, be it like what I'm doing right now is I'm putting the foil on the metal so I have something to solder to, because solder's not going to stick to the painted metal swirls. So all of the copper that I'm putting on right now, I have to make sure that I cover with solder. Now, another thing you could do is you could try to grind off or use some kind of paint remover and remove the covering, the paint or the lacquer, whatever's on this metal lamp base. And then, just do a little area and see if solder will stick to it. If solder sticks to it and it's not too hard to get the paint off, then you wouldn't have to do this foiling. I actually never even tried it with this. I just went straight to the foiling. I did decide that I'm not going to worry too much about underneath, the inside of this, because my vision is to cover the whole thing with different size glass globs. So you're really not going to be able to see inside. So if there's little bits inside that I didn't cover, as you can see, it's not the biggest deal, because I'm going to end up, I'm going to put lights on the inside, and it's going to end up being patina black anyway. But I'm not even going to worry about patinaing the inside of this, because I don't think that it's going to be transparent enough, the globs that I'm using, to see inside if it's still silver or copper. So the first thing I did after I covered it with foil is I put a coat of solder on everything. Not as much the inside, as I said, I'm not worried about, but definitely the rims and the sides. The reason I did this was because it's going to be easier for the solder to stick to it if it's already pre-tinned. That was my thought behind this. So I decided I'm going to cover the whole thing with solder to begin with. Now, when you put foil on something like this, you're going to be using tons of that foil. As long as it sticks well, you could use an inexpensive foil. Now, and it doesn't have to be black backed because obviously I was going right on the metal. Now, right here, I'm cutting a piece of black backed, decent foil, and I'm cutting it into fourths. So I'm actually cutting it twice. I'm cutting the 7/32 once in half, and then I'm cutting it again. And this is because these little glass globs that I'm doing right now are so small that I really don't want to overlap the glass glob with a lot of foil. Now, the reason I'm using black backed for this is that, well, I have some. I don't have a lot of regular stuff. And the black backed, see, you can see the black inside of it a little bit, and I didn't want to see the copper. So that's why I'm using the black backed. And you can see right now that I took some big glass globs that are like 1.5-inch diameters and cut them in half. And I did that because I wanted to have some variety of glass globs in this. So I have a whole bunch of different ones that I put foil around and got them all ready. And I decided that for this project, I'm going to be using oranges, yellows into browns. So that's my color combination I'm going to be using. But when you're putting your foil on your glass globs, make sure that the foil really adheres very nicely to your globs, that it's not really cheap foil. And as I said, the foil that actually goes on the armature of the lamp, you can use a little bit less expensive foil because you're wrapping so much that it's probably going to stick fine. So now I am adding glass globs and trying to keep those rims. I wanted to keep those ribs or rim, whatever you want to call them, I wanted to keep them pretty flat to try to keep that look. So that was one of my objectives here. Now, as you see, even looking at this particular brown glob, that if I used wider foil, it would have really encroached on the actual circle. You wouldn't end up with as much glass showing. So I didn't want to end up with, big borders around all these pieces of glass. I wanted to have little as skinny as possible borders, but it's still kind of a clumpy type of stained glass. These seams and everything are not like your beautiful smooth seams that you get in some kind of stained glass. But when you're doing globs like this, I don't think it's possible to have, beautiful, symmetrically smooth seams all over the place. It's just part of the art that you're going to get the black part, the solder is going to be clumpy. That's just the way it's going to be. Another way, besides using gloves to hold up areas to keep it supported, is I put a piece of fabric. This is an old sheet that I had ripped off a piece, and I'm using that to try to support. That's the globs. That's one of the hardest things with this particular lamp, was that the metal did not have a very big space between the metal, and so it was really hard to get in there and hold the stones while I was soldering them. I mean the glass globs while I was soldering them. So this did take hours to finish. I would probably say maybe 20 hours to do all this soldering of these globs into the base, and each piece of glass took a minute to 2 minutes to foil, to put the foil around, to cut the foil, put the foil around, and then smooth the foil over. So it's not like a quick project, but I was just obsessed that I had to have this done like this. I just really thought it would be pretty. One thing about having the small glass balls instead of using pieces of sheet glass for this is that they automatically, because they're so small, they will bend to the contour, the curve shape of this type of project. Obviously, if you use flat glass, you'd have to have lots of different pieces because it's such a curve. Now, one of the hard things, of course, is to find the correct glob to use in each of the spots. So sometimes I would fill a particularly difficult area with solder if I couldn't find a piece of glass that would fit. I had to foil tons of really small pieces just because there was so many pieces that the round ones wouldn't fit at all. So I had to use the irregular glass shapes. I had quite a variety of different pieces of glass already foiled so that I could just reach down and pick a different one to get a nice variety of glass. At one point, I actually had to cut the smaller pieces of glass with my those circular cutters because I still didn't have the correct pieces. So sometimes I use globs from the table, as you can see, and sometimes I use it fresh from the spool of solder. I'm using 60-40 tin lead solder for this. It's you use water to clean the flux off of it. This is not pre-fluxed solder, so I do have to use flux. I like to use the gel flux is what I usually use. It tends to not run all over as much as the liquid flux, and the paste is just a little bit too thick for me to use, so I usually use the gel. I have even mixed the gel with liquid flux. Sometimes I want it to flow a little bit more, but it's whatever you want to do. You can see that yellow thing in the corner there is my fume exhauster, because you don't want to be breathing in all these fumes all the time. Yeah, this piece is just a little bit too big, so I had to go get another one. Sometimes those irregular pieces work very nicely. You can just kind of wrap around a piece. So that's kind of cool. It looks like that one's going to fit okay if I can get it to rest correctly. Anyways, that yellow thing up on the right-hand corner is my fume exhauster, the end of it. So when I am filling these little holes that I don't have a piece of glass to go in, so sometimes the hole is a little bit bigger than just a solder seam, really. It's actually like a hole that I have to actually plop in a little bit of solder. If you wait for that area to cool down a little bit and then almost drop a glob of solder into that area, it will fill in nicely. You can also do what's called using cold solder, which means that the solder is an older piece of solder, so maybe one that you already have on your table, and when you drop it, you make sure that the product that you're dropping it on is not very hot at all. So it's almost going to give kind of a dullish shine to it. It's not going to be as shiny as a fresh piece of solder, but that's okay because I am going to patina everything black. So if some of it's not as shiny as others, that's okay. It's fine with me for this project. Now this is one of the large globs that I cut in half. And so I'm putting those here and there along the side. Yeah, my hand's kind of in the way here, but I'm just tacking it in place. So I tack it in place and then I add more solder to solder it on. So yeah, as I told you, it took like about 20 hours to do this. Well, a lot of it was, you're spending time trying to figure out not only how to balance the little piece of stone or glass where you want it, but also just finding the right one. So you got to find the right piece that's going to fit, and then you got to kind of hold it in place somehow. So sometimes you can like hold it as you tack a little bit, and then obviously you don't want to hold it too long because you're going to burn your fingers. And I have used like silicone finger cots at times, and that does help. Of course, just using your uncovered hand seems to be so much easier than wearing gloves or something. But yeah, you do burn yourself sometimes, and that's not fun. So you just got to be really careful. Now, because these pieces of the wire itself or the metal itself that's holding this lamp that already came that way, they're so close together that I had to keep on thinking, well, where is my hand going to be? Where is my support going to be? So I basically started at one end of the lamp and worked up from one end. And then I also would do like one coily like section and then do the one right next to it. So I tried to think about, well, how am I going to want to hold these pieces of glass while I'm soldering? Because that's going to be like difficult to do. So as you see, I kind of like worked off one end like that. And that also, I could use my cloth to hold it by filling like one end with the cloth. Then I'd take the cloth out and I would fill another end. Now, I was also thinking, okay, when I'm done, I want to put fairy lights inside. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to be able to reach inside this unit in order to help get the fairy lights where I want them to be. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how I made a little like window or a little door in one of the parts. What I did was I took some scrap silicone that I had. So this is that sheet silicone that I often will put on my table that I'm working on. And I cut some thinner pieces, and they were only like, they were cut to the curve for one thing. The ones on the sides were cut to the curve, and then another flat piece on the bottom, and then clamped all over the place to hold it in place of where I wanted to put a little window. And now I am trying to fill just that area with some glass. Now, the reason I'm using silicone is I want this to be like a window, so I want it to fit the contour of my lamp, but not actually solder to the sides of my lamp, So I'm hoping that this silicone will help me not solder it by mistake to it. And it was pretty successful, as you'll see. So I would put some of these glass stones where I think they would be, where they would fit, and then solder that bunch together. And then move on to another area until I had my whole little window or door that I was making. full. So now I'm going to flux it. And yes, of course, when you put flux on it, the little guys move around, but oh well. Um, and because they were very kind of pesky and wanted to move really, really easily, I had to almost drop solder here and there to start holding them together before I actually finished soldering the whole thing. So now it's almost like one little group swimming around in the silicone barrier that I made. Now, I've mentioned on some of my other videos, because the foiling on these smaller pieces especially is not, really it's not very wide, so it's not really sticking that great to these pieces of glass. I mean, yeah, I pushed them down or burnished them down as much as possible, but still, you do not want to heat this up very much because they will like release from their stickiness, so that some of the little pieces do fall. So I'm adding more flux here and there. You don't want too much flux because the flux, of course, will heat up a lot, and that will add extra heat to your little glass globs, thus making them kind of detach from their stickiness. So, that's kind of a limited thing. In a minute, we will move over a little bit, I believe. I'm also putting solder right around the outside rim of my little window because I'm hoping that it'll end up being pretty much the same shape and contour as the actual lamp itself. So I'm adding solder all around it and on the edges. And at times I had to move the clamps because they got in the way. Sometimes an area wouldn't work, so I would have to pull the little stones out and start over again if they didn't want to work. But as you see, I did progress and kept going along, adding more solder and stones as I went. Now these clamps that I'm using, they're just some run-of-the-mill little clamps. They do not have silicone ends to them. That'd be really cool if I could find some that did. So they will melt if you touch them with your iron. So you got to watch out for that. Now, after I got rid of the silicone, as you can see, there were areas that my poor little door was attached. So there were areas that the solder kind of went between the two layers of silicone there from the sides and the bottom, but not all the way. So I could just heat up those parts and kind of make the whole thing fall so that I had my little window or my little door. But it still kept the shape that I wanted. Kind of okay, not perfect, but it ended up doing what I needed. What I did on the sides, because you could see there was a gap between this little door and the sides, which allowed enough space for me to add a piece of wire on each side of this, which kind of finished the sides of the little door nicely. I just had to bend the wire so that it was the right shape. So this gave a nice edge to my side. And some people ask why I don't use tinned wire more. Well, tinned wire is really nice. The solder sticks to it really quickly because it's already tinned, although copper accepts solder really easily also. But tinned wire costs twice or three times as much as untinned wire, at least when I've priced it. So I usually save that kind of wire for when I want really smooth, like jump rings or something, where I want the perfect smooth wire. and I don't really need that for this because I'm going to be putting solder along it anyway. So you can see that there's still some copper there showing, and I'm going to be putting this wire all the way along it, kind of using pliers when I need to bend it as I go. See, no, my art is not perfectly smooth and everything. It's a little on the clumpy side. It's just the way it is. Using metal tweezers is great, but try not to get solder on them because they will stick to them. Now you can see that I'm putting it in place so I can finish adding stones to my actual lamp to fill the gap between the little window and the lamp itself. So I'm going, oh yeah, that guy will fit. So I'm putting another stone there because I don't want, solder to fill that whole area. That would just be a bit much. So I wanted to add some stones. I keep saying stones, but these are actually, I think, all glass. Actually, well, maybe that one I just put, that might be a stone. But even if there's any stones in this particular lamp, they are completely transparent or translucent. So nothing's opaque, and none of the glass or stones have any swirls or anything in them. They're all just a solid mass for the most part. So, if they are a type of natural stone, they're pretty darn clear because that's the look that this particular lamp is having. And yeah, and I do collect glass and stones from many different sources for the past like 4 years that I've been doing this. So I have like lots of amber and yellows and browns that I could pull from, and I just sit there when I'm watching TV, usually with my family, and foil forever so that I have cups and jars full of all different sizes and colors so that when I'm doing a project like this, most of what I need is already done and ready for me to have fun with. I really like variety on a project like this. I like to have as many different shapes, sizes, and colors of glass in the project that, go with the color scheme. I don't like repetition and like the same, unless I'm doing a pattern thing and I want like the same, that's the look I'm doing. But often I want a big variety. So I'm checking right now to make sure that, yes, I think it's going to fit. I think the little little door is gonna fit just fine right there. And yeah, it's not gonna be a perfect fit. Right now I'm adding a piece of wire and kind of following the contour of the little door that I made. And this piece of wire is going to be the border that's attached to the actual lamp itself, just like I made a piece of wire going around the door. This one's going around the actual lamp to make a nice border for my little door. So when you want to add something like a door, a little secret little compartment to your project, it takes tons of time because there's just a lot to it to make a little opening. Yeah, I could have like had this in the back and just, I don't know, just used a piece of paper or something to or foam or something to fill the hole that I wanted to leave, but I wanted to do it this way. So I try to incorporate any little window or door that I need into the design. And a lot of my lamps that I've made do have little doors in them so that I can get inside. You know, what if the lights die and I need to get in and replace them, and I need to get my hand in there because when I put the fairy lights in, they all tend to clump to one side. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. So I want to be able to get inside the lamp if I need to. I'm going to have the next video, or the next videos that come up, we'll talk about the lampshade itself. And at this point, I was still kind of thinking about what kind of lampshade am I going to have? Because I can't have, see, I'm using a piece of actual silicone to kind of make a fake bottom for this hunk of solder I'm putting in. And yeah, that I use lots of different things. I use fabric, I use silicone, I use silicone washers, I use gloves, whatever seems to work. This is a silicone washer that I'm putting in to help hold it up. Whatever seems to work for you. Silicone's just a great thing because the solder won't stick to it. So yeah, at this point, I'm like, I don't want my lampshade to be fabric. I want to make a glass lampshade, but I don't want it to be as busy as the base because I don't want them to compete with each other. So the lampshade itself will have some globs in it, but it's not going to be as decorative as the base. That's what I'm thinking right now. Okay, so this is the other end of the actual base itself, and I am starting this part with the metal wire. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this metal wire kind of bend to the contour of the little door, which is at the top, and then I'm going to fill the gap with stones with glass globs after that. So I'm kind of bending it around so it's pretty much the contour of my little door that I made, leaving a little teeny gap so that it can fit, because I'm going to have to open and shut this thing, right? So now I have that piece there. I'm trying to make sure that none of my fabric got inadvertently like soldered in. So you can tell that the fabric itself is a little burned in areas, but that's okay. It's as long as it holds up what I want. So I'm putting pieces of glass in place. I guess I thought that one wasn't a very good one, so I found another one that had a little like blob at one end. Oh, that'll fit very nicely. I will tack it a little bit, and let's see if I actually had to use silicone for the back. Sometimes the solder just kind of flows exactly where you want it, and it's awesome. And then some other times you have to add it to get it to fill where you need to have. So this is one of the brown ones that I think they're glass, but they might not have been. As I said, I've bought these over the years, so sometimes I don't even know exactly where all the stones and glass came from. So I'm using hunks of silicone and my my trusty clamp and washers and fabric, whatever it takes to hold it in place. Sometimes I'm putting a old piece of solder and just kind of balancing on my project, because that way I don't have to use two hands to hold the solder, and I can use my hand to do something else. So you know, there's all different whatever makes it work. Now I'm adding another piece. That's a really pretty piece. It was a little bit redder than some of the stones. I really love those. I only have a few in it, but they're really pretty. I don't want to have, you know, the same color, the same size, like right next to each other. So sometimes it takes a while to figure out, well, let's see, I haven't used that color for a while. I guess I can use that. Oh, put a little baby silicone washer underneath that one. That'll hold it nicely as I go. Yeah, this is one of those longer videos, but truthfully, I'm not showing, and I did not record the majority of this project because it was just so long. So I'm just trying to give you a feeling of the project. So right now I'm trying to find yet another stone that'll fit, piece of glass that'll fit. These light yellow ones that I'm like using right now, those were actually a lot thicker than the other ones. So there's only certain places where I can use them because they just don't fit. But they look kind of cool because they're kind of a really light yellow. So I think the light will really shine through those. So I bought amber colored twinkle lights. Now you can buy, you know, a colored twinkle lights. I've used those before, or you can buy them white, or you can buy them amber or slightly yellow colored. So you got to figure out, well, what color will work best. Now the white ones can be a bit jarring. They can be quite bright, and I didn't really want to see the twinkle lights. I wanted to have more of just a glow on the inside. So I did order kind of amber colored ones. Now I'm pulling the fabric and all the washers out of this. Then I'm looking, okay, did I miss any? You know, I'm looking around. Did any fall off? Did I miss soldering some of these? Does my little door fit correctly? Now I need to make a little like hinges for this door. So I used wire and bent it kind of in a little zigzag because I figured, well, I'll have two little jump hooks at one end, and then I'll have two little jump hooks at the other end, and that will, you know, hold it all together. And then I'll put little jump hooks on both sides. So I have one end done. Now I'm seeing that fit kind of nicely. So now I need to work on the other end. Here's my little guy. Yeah, that's, I think I might have, I figured I can't really hold that very well without my hand being there. So I put a silicone little finger caught thingy on my thumb. It doesn't really fit very well, but it was fine for what I'm doing here. So I'm trying to bend that around there and solder it where I need to. This wire, I think, was a little bit thicker maybe than I really needed. This is actually tinned wire because the top of those little loopies that I made, the zigzag that I made, I don't really want to put solder on those because I don't want to have the problem of the solder filling the little zigzags that I want to put the little jump rings in. So I used pretend solder for this so that it'll still take the patina correctly, you know, so I don't have to cover it with solder, but it'll still stick nicely. So right now I'm trying to make some little zigzag loopy guys that are lined up pretty nicely to the ones I put on the actual lamp, and I want them to fit and wrap around this part of the little door that I'm making. And yeah, I think that the wire could have been a little bit thinner gauge. Didn't have to be quite so fat, but that's okay. It worked. So I put a little solder there. So that's soldered on. And my solder iron is really kind of getting kind of grody. So I'm using a stone that is made specifically to clean your solder iron. And I will put that in the description so you can see what it is. I can't remember the name of it. It starts with an S, but that kind of helped clean the iron. Now what I'm doing is I'm running my iron. So my little door, you saw that door that kind of blends in nicely now. I'm running my iron along all of the ribs to try to get them. Remember, I wanted them kind of smooth, to try to smooth them out, because I'm pretty much done adding all those pieces of glass. So now I'm kind of smoothing them out as I go. Now, one thing when you foil something like this, it's better if you don't have the seams of the foil toward like the top where you want it smooth, like what I'm doing right now, because you will see that line. So there are places, yeah, you see the line. So it's actually dropping some extra solder onto my silicone work table, but I will use those globs of solder. I am not wasting any solder. I do use all of it. I scoop them all up and use them. You just have to put flux and they work fine. Now I opened up my little window, my little door, and I'm using a flashlight to help me find where the light can go through, because I would like to have it without little holes here and there so that the light, the little twinkle lights, don't shine brighter where there's a crack or a hole. I want them to be only shining through the glass globs. So if there's any holes, I will have to fill them, which is easier said than done. Sometimes it's just really kind of a challenge to get the solder to actually fill the hole that you want it to. But you can do it with some perseverance. So as I said, I'm using the flashlight. I'm going around. I'm looking, trying to see if there's any. There's my little door. Any ones that have fallen off, or I never did solder that area, or there's a little bit of copper showing that I need to fix up some copper. Or maybe the foil has detached a little bit from a glass glob, so there's a gap, and maybe I can just fill that gap with a little bit of solder, and then life will be wonderful. So that's what I'm doing, going around it, trying to see what's going on. So that's my little door again. So I am kind of checking out what I have created, trying to smooth out, trying to get rid of extra globs that might have adhered to the project. I also had to take something that was strong, like a piece of metal, and knock off some globs from the inside of my lamp that I was worried were going to like get loose. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but if there were extra big globs, or if the globs were adhering to the back of if a solder glob was adhering to the back of a glass, I want to knock that off if I can. This obviously there was a glass stone that fell out. It's kind of hard to find another one that's going to fit exactly. So it might not look quite as perfect as it was before, but that guy fit pretty good. So pretty well. So I'm going to solder that little yellow guy in place, and he will will take over that spot. Sometimes when a piece of glass falls out, I heat up the opening and actually take the foil off too. Sometimes I just add the glass. Now I have it on a piece of plastic and I am going to add patina. I've washed it and scrubbed it and fixed as much as I could the holes that I could see, so I hope there's no holes left. I'm using Novacon black patina. Make sure you wear gloves. You don't want to get this on you. Or you don't want to breathe it in either. It's very hazardous. Because there's a lot of different contours of this, I am using a spray bottle to spray on the patina. So sometimes I use a toothbrush or a cotton swab and get it on that way, and sometimes I spray it. It doesn't take very much. It's a very light spraying. The patina is very, very thin, so it goes on like a mist very, very easily. Now using a toothbrush, and I am using any patina that's on the table or on the object, and I am scrubbing it into all the little crevices and corners and places, because I know that I didn't spray every direction in life. So I will have to scrub it in. Remember, this is black patina. Some people will wash their project with distilled water. Some people will put vinegar on it. There's lots of different theories of how you can get the patina to really adhere to and really change the solder color. Obviously, you need it really clean, because if you want a dark color patina, you want either the copper to be really bright or the black to be really black. You really need to start off with clean solder. Some people even use steel wool and give a nice buffing with really fine steel wool over the whole thing to really clean up that solder. I usually then let it sit a little bit, maybe a half hour, just so it can do its thing, and then rinse it off. I use cold water and just wash it all off. Now you can see where the copper was not covered with solder, that the patina did not stick. That is why you need to cover everything with solder. There's that extra hole you can see up in the left corner, and that was where I threaded in my little fairy lights. So yeah, I had to drill holes for my fairy lights to go in first. And here it is. The base is now complete. And so it ended up looking pretty nice. It's shiny, just like I like. And you can see the little door. Now, obviously, you'd put that little door toward the back where people wouldn't see it as much. But anyways, it's there. And that's my project. Thank you for watching. Next time, we'll work on the lamp shade, or at least soon we will. It'll take a while. Thank you. Bye.